Hello everyone, it's Richard Lewis here with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about conflicts of interest in Counter-Strike, specifically about the Refresh or RFRSH or however you pronounce it group. Now, just as a heads up, I've done lots of videos on this, particularly when talking about Esports. I'll make my views clear right at the start of the video, just in case you're under any, misunderstandings about how I feel about it. So I certainly think if you are in a sporting league or a sporting circuit, I don't believe teams should have shared ownership. In an ideal world, that would mean there would be no investors overlapping. Ideally, I suppose, you could even go as far as to say principal sponsors. I think that's probably taking it a little bit too far. But certainly the people who control the team, put the money into a team, I don't think they should be the same people controlling multiple teams. Generally, the world of sports tends to agree with me. There's a few concessions in soccer, for example, where you can own small stakes in teams if you own other stakes in teams. But there's been a lot of famous court cases about this. And certainly it undermines competitive integrity. That's generally the standpoint of most sporting leagues. And therefore, it doesn't happen. And at the worst, you aren't allowed to own like majority stakeholders in multiple teams that would be likely to play each other. It's just not allowed for obvious reasons, because you could rig an outcome of a game. You could lean on employees in one team to, I want this team to go further in a tournament because it has a better team of winning it overall. So you're going to take a dive effectively, in this game. And I'm not saying that kind of thing is going on in Counter-Strike, but I think we should eliminate the possibility. People certainly said when I broke the iBuyPower story, no pro player would fix a match for skins. Yeah, okay, right. I mean, all the problems we've got in sports are going to happen on esports. It's just fucking amateur hour because we're not as big as sports and there's not as much money going on. But certainly we should learn from sports and try and stop systemic corruption happening before it happens. We should head it off at the pass. Let's stop it. Let's prevent it rather than then look back and go, oh yeah, I was a bit fucking dumb. No wonder people were, up to no good. So, well, you're going to be like, hang on, this Refresh group, who are they? They haven't even done anything yet, Richard. Fucking hell. Chill your boots. All right, so let's talk about who they are. Let's bring up their website. And this is the RFRSH. I'm going to call them RFRSH, Sam. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it.
They missed out. They left out the E's for a reason.
You want to be edgy?
Yeah, so I'm just going to call them RFRSH. It's probably pronounced Refresh. I don't really care. Put your E's in. I'm guessing they couldn't register that. It was probably taken, right? Yeah. But anyway, you can see here on the homepage, it says it's a privately owned and operated esports media company. We provide winning commercial and marketing strategies for companies looking to enter and succeed in the wildly growing and challenging esports market. We represent and run strategic and commercial operations for some of the best esports teams in the world and create the best possible conditions for our team so they can concentrate on being athletes. So ostensibly, it's posing as a media company. We're like an agency. We will go out and get you deals, and we represent these teams. But that's kind of not entirely true. So the main guy behind it is a guy called Nyholm, and he's got a Wikipedia page because he's super famous. And you can see here how it describes him: a serial technology entrepreneur and investor from Copenhagen, Denmark, who's founded multiple technology startups, was an advisor to Mojang, who of course created Minecraft and the sadly defunct Scrolls and probably some other games. And you can see basically how he made his money. And he joined a venture capital firm in 2010 called Sunstone Capital as a partner, which basically gives him the right to go out and make moves. He can put the money into whatever he wants to, provided the other partners and whatnot sign off and think it's a good investment. It's like you've got chips to play with at a table, basically, and you can gamble. And that's what venture capital is, ultimately. That's what it is. You place a series of bets. And, I bet this is going to work out and get us a big ROI, and I bet this is going to work out, and some come in and some don't. That's what it is. You're at a rich man's casino, effectively. So, who do they represent? Would be a good thing to talk about. Well, they represent four teams, and four teams of varying distinction, I think is perhaps the kindest way of putting it. The most notable is Astralis, but they also represent Godsend, Heroic, and Norse. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's really good because it's empowering players and player ownership. Right, forget all that for a second. We'll come to that. But that's who they represent. Now, it's particularly interesting to me that they describe themselves as a media company because that's kind of, they're not just representing these teams. They have stakes in these teams. So they have a stake in Astralis, for example. And if you look here at Astralis and go down to, this is the datacvr.virk.dk, which has all of the registered businesses in Denmark. And you go down and you look at management, order to ownership, and power to bind. You will see, obviously, Freddie Biscoff is in there, and Jakob Lund Christensen is in there, and they all own various shares. But then if you come down to the shareholders, you will see Sunstone Technology Venture Funds has a sizable share. In fact, an equal share as Frederick and Jakob Lund Christensen. Now, Jakob Lund Christensen, he was the guy who used to be behind Copenhagen Wolves, and they can see it. Sunstone Technology Ventures Fund are in there. So this effectively means that Nicola Nyholm, if you like, has put money via Sunstone into a team that his company RFRSH represents the media rights for. How very interesting. It's kind of layered, there's definitely a vested financial interest there. Now, I haven't really got any of the documents for Godsent yet. I could probably get them. I don't think Sweden has like any sort of protections or anything. I think everything has to be public available. But certainly, I think we can see just with RFRSH alone, there's some overlap. Interestingly enough, if you look over at, say, for example, Heroic's website, and you go to them and you see what their opening statement is about their announcement and their unveiling. And keep in mind, it was fairly obvious what was going on anyway, just from talking around in the scene, that there were these fingers in all of these collective pies. And they were appointing the same logo designer, for example, to come up with all the logos. They all look of a similar art style. People could join the dots. But if you look here, it does say we will soon be announcing the partners who have helped make Heroic a reality. Well, why not just say at the start? Why do we need to wait? What's the issue? And I imagine that's because everybody is getting everything laid out just nice, so it looks all above board, and actually we can say, hey, hang on, there's no money going between all of these teams, nothing to see here, Richard, nothing to see here, journalists, and they're going to try and obfuscate it. That's what I think's going on. And I don't think it's a coincidence, actually, that I got in touch with Nicholas Nyholm via Twitter, and I wanted to talk to him about this because I was just going to announce, all of these teams are all linked to RFRSH, and there's certainly some money, some financial ties. He had a cold and he couldn't talk to me, and then we didn't get a chance to meet, and then they came out and basically announced and did a Reddit AMA. So I'll question the timing of that. I think rather than have me basically reveal what was a fairly open secret anyway, but was never officially communicated, I think the best thing to do, obviously, from their point of view, wasn't for me to make it look like it was potentially scandalous, and just to come out and admit what they were up to and frame it that we were a media company. Now, of course, just to add this as well, Nicola Nyholm isn't... it doesn't hold the same role at Sunstone Capital anymore. But to be clear, he is still a venture partner. So he still references the deals, still gets the money out there. He's still going to be the person who says, hey, invest in these teams. And that's why I think you'll probably find when we get down to it that Sunstone probably has some sort of connection to all of these, or certainly Nyholm himself. So anyway, let's get into this Reddit AMA, because there were some interesting revelations. I don't know if they were intentional or not, but there were some interesting revelations in here, which again gave me pause for concern. I was like, hang on a minute. I don't really know if I particularly like this. So there's a guy called Tolkien Fanatic. I'm sure you guys will have come across him before. He asked some pretty good questions. And he said, was Astralis' acquisition of Glaive facilitated through RFRSH? Now, this is something I never even thought about or was principally concerned about. But actually, this is a definite area of concern for me. So let me make it clear. You've got Astralis with Sunstone Capital on the board. Nicola Nyholm's in there. And then you've got Heroic, who somehow tied to RFRSH, who are tied to Sunstone Capital. So the same money. And one player is going to the other team. And certainly he's a desirable acquisition. Astralis needed a new in-game leader. Glaive was a very desirable player to keep a hold of, yet the move seemed to be done very quickly without any acrimony or upset. He just seemed to move across. And we all know Astralis is the bigger product in the portfolio, in the RFRSH portfolio. Now, I'm not saying anything happened, but again, let's think about this logically. If the money is the same and decisions can be unilaterally made and people have input, then why wouldn't you say, look, Astralis have actually got a chance of winning tournaments. It'd be better for RFRSH, it'd be better for the investors, right? If this move happens, don't worry, Heroic. You're not quite there yet, but we'll get you something. We'll get you something that can work. But we got to let Glaive go there. It's just good for business. And we'll negotiate a nominal sum, not a high amount of money for the contract buyout. Indeed, I didn't see any talk of money for the buyout. And usually when these things come up, think about Tarek when he was meant to be going to Cloud9, $50,000 buyout, right, from CLG. Cloud9 didn't want to pay that much. Got Stewie 2K instead. The rest is history. But usually the number gets out there. Usually it gets talked about. Think about Scream, right? Didn't get talked about, did it? There was no leak. So they must have a pretty fucking tight ship over there, which, let me tell you, there's no such thing as a tight ship in esports. It's very interesting. I'd like to know the particulars of that deal, because I think that is concerning to me. And you can see here, the question that Tolkien Fanatic asks is, does RFRSH have direct stakes in any of the teams? And they say, with direct stakes, I assume you mean we own shares. No, we currently do not own shares in any of the teams, but we will be very open and say that we certainly rule that out in the future. So first of all, we don't know whether Sunstone Partners have invested in all of these teams. We certainly know Nicola Nyholm is the guy who funds RFRSH. RFRSH run the media rights for all of the teams. Sunstone Cap and also is the partner for Sunstone Capital, who have also invested in Astralis. So saying we don't directly own shares, a little bit disingenuous. You yourself, the sole and principal funder of the businesses, will get of the RFRSH business, as we'll get to in a second. Your Sunstone Partners, your venture capital arm, does. So, yeah, interesting. And to say that we won't rule that out in future, definitely rule that out, by the way, because that makes this bunch of cronyism, nepotism. It makes, all these conflicts of interest, it would only make it worse. So definitely rule that out. And you can see here, says that Sunstone is an investor in RFRSH, which of course we knew, but that establishes the connection. And you can see here that, there's another question about, will you expand into Finnish and Icelandic teams? Of course, there are options out there, Ents being one of them. But you can see what Tolkien Fanatic also brought to the table is RFRSH is a subsidiary of Beatnik. And what's Beatnik? Now, Beatnik APS, I mean, this is how all these people operate. Companies within companies, shell companies. They don't. They talk about how they want to be transparent, but they don't make it easy for people to find. We saw that with the Jens Hilger thing with Fnatic and G2, right? This is just what they do. They try and make it difficult for you to follow the fucking paper trail. But yes, so this is Nicola Nyholm, owns Beatnik APS. And in the Reddit AMA, he says, quote, "For reference, Beatnik is my personal holding company. Until we get the external funding, I've been financing RFRSH out of my own pocket through Beatnik." So everything that RFRSH has touched has basically come out of Nicola Nyholm's pocket. All right? Now, I think that alone is a serious conflict of interest. I don't want these teams to be playing each other. We're going to see that. There's going to be a relegation game coming up soon in ESL. I'm not too sure who it is, Sam. Is it? I think it's Heroic and who else?
Who knows? I can check.
Yeah, get it up for me while I just continue to ramble. But you know, as I said before, there was conflict of interest when sponsors were involved, when Steel Series and LCS teams had to go up against each other in relegation. Steel Series basically sponsored 3 of the 6, and the teams that were getting relegated had the option to pick and not play Steel Series teams, and it was intimated in a meeting, maybe don't pick people who are Steel Series partners. That way we can maximize our potential to get 3 sponsored teams back into the league. And people said, ooh, that's a little bit much. A little bit potential conflict of interest there. And Riot certainly paid attention to it. This is far worse. This is really concerning. And they even say later on, they say, we don't have any shares in the team, any of the teams at the moment, but we will not rule that out in future. We don't know what the model the investors in SK Navi and VP have, but you definitely do. And I think we can all agree ES Force owning 3 of the top teams in the world is a bad fucking idea. It's a bad idea, especially when you start doing show matches and then it turns out that they own ties to gambling sites and ties to broadcasting sites and ties to tournament organizers with tournament admins. All of these things happening at once is a bad idea. It doesn't matter if nobody does anything wrong. If anything questionable happens and you can say, oh, maybe this did happen, maybe there was a conspiracy, then obviously the mechanics, the machinery are off, right? So did you find that link for me, brother?
I can't find where they're playing each other, but Godsent and Heroic are in the same thing for the IEM Katowice qualifier.
There's that. There was definitely a relegation game, I think. I might got it wrong. Maybe it is the qualifier. But the bottom line is, again, you're going to see these teams play each other repeatedly, and we now know there's, a guy pulling the strings. There is a puppet master. Now, it gets worse. Richard, what do you mean? Remember, there was all this talk about an Astralis-funded league. That's what people were talking about. And the reason it was called the Astralis-funded league was because nobody really knew where the money was coming from, but they knew it had something to do with those guys over there. And it's not Astralis. It's these guys. It's RFRSH. It's Nicola Nyholm. This is what's going on. They want to create, well, first they looked at a league, and then they thought, actually, a league is a bad idea because it's already a crowded space. So now they want to make a tournament circuit. A tournament circuit. What does that entail? I don't know. I imagine there'll be some LAN events. Even in that AMA, they say, oh, yeah, we'd like to fill some Danish stadiums, maybe some strategic partnership with North over at FC Copenhagen, who've said they would love to have a big event. You notice they mentioned that in the interview. We'd like to have a big event in our stadium and fill our stadium and have an esports event there. So, far be it from me to suggest that a Danish entrepreneur and a Danish sports team who both want the same things would come together in synergistic partnership. Maybe not. Maybe North get pushed out because they're not part of the RFRSH club. Who knows? Welcome to esports. Politics everywhere. But the bottom line is they now want to have a tournament circuit, and this is legit. This is what they want to do. They don't know how they're going to do it. They're going to get some money. They're going to put some money up. It'll come from Beatnik or Sunstone, right? And they're going to have a tournament circuit where teams compete. And you know what? I imagine when the invite lists are going out, it's going to be these teams that go, because why wouldn't you invite your own teams, maximize your return of investment, right? Obviously, you're going to do it. Now, again, a tournament organizer owning teams that then compete at their tournaments, please, can we stop the fucking madness? Can we stop the insanity? You know? The 4 RFRSH teams entered the RFRSH Cup, and guess what? RFRSH team number 2 won and keeps all of the prize money. But we'll be taking that as part of our investment, actually. So, come on. What the fuck is going on here? Why can't people see that this is not what esports should be? It is not a rich boy's toy. Even in fucking soccer, when the Emiratis come in, they buy a club. They don't buy the league and buy all the teams in it and then make them play each other week in, week out. And if, they don't like what they're seeing, fuck it, we just change it. Yeah, I'll just swap the players around. Fuck it, I can do whatever I want. I own it all. You wouldn't allow that to happen. Are we going to get to a stage where it's like when Stalin used to go watch Russian soccer teams play and Stalin would fall asleep and everyone had stopped playing until he woke up? Because this is what we're fucking heading towards. You know what I mean? Like one person, one entity controlling entire divisions of a game. That should be organic and should be about competition and not conflict of interest. Just the true integrity of real competition and people trying their best and not money. Not money, Why does esports have to go down this dark and sinister and potentially corrupt route? I do not understand it. It makes no sense to me. So I'll tell you how I know, for starters, that they're definitely going to do some form of tournament. I'm going to tell you why. Because if you go over to the website, again, the RFRSH website, and you look at their team, you'll see, the good-looking, handsome man, Nicola Nyholm, looking good for a guy in his 40s. You'll see Geordie up there, not sure what he's up to. Don't know much about him. Obviously, I know the other guys, Jakob Lund Christensen, what a big, beautiful bear he is. And Nicholas Estrup as well, a guy that I've worked with many, many times, been associated with some big brands. Casper Hvitt, I believe, it was a former handball pro. We don't have handball in the UK, Sam. So,
no,
but
I've seen it.
It's a big fucking deal to those Scandics, right?
Yeah.
And then look at this guy. He, like me, losing weight, doing well for himself. It's Graham Pitt, head of esports operations. And let me tell you what Graham's speciality is, even though he likes to dine out on the fact that he got to manage a UK team once by default and they won a tournament once, and even though he was just doing it because no one else wanted to do it and ESL said they had to have someone, he definitely took photos of him with the trophy and all that. He's not really a general manager. He's a tournament organizer. He's a tournament admin, and a very good one, right? One of the most experienced you could get out there. He knows all of the rules, regulations, how to implement them, how to communicate with the public about them. He understands all of the layers, how to coordinate a tournament, a chain of command, a hierarchical structure to avoid delays, avoid issues. He understands it all. He also knows from a technical standpoint what you need to have a successful tournament, how to change PCs out in rapid time in the result of a error or a system failure. This is a guy whose expertise all revolves around that. Why would you hire him for what is a media company? You don't make that hire. I'll tell you that. Richard, no, come on. You're not qualified to make this. I definitely am. I know when you hire somebody for their expertise, and a media company that wants to go out and get brands doesn't need in the trenches guy like Graham Messioso Pitt. He's there for when they start their tournament circuit. That's what's going to happen. That's what he's there for. You can say, well done, Richard, for putting it together when they invariably announce it. So that, again, is problematic because we don't know the nature of the relationship between these teams. We don't know the nature of what this tournament circuit will have, whether these teams will be playing in it, without question every time. There's so many questions that have to be answered before we can get on board with any of this. And coming out and doing a nice fluffy fucking Reddit AMA where you basically reveal a few things that are concerning by just because you have to, because an intelligent person like Tolkien Fanatic is calling you out on it. And the rest of the time you're saying, yeah, we love player-owned organizations. We think it's great, but we'd work with anyone, blah, blah, and just a bunch of fluffy, nice stuff that makes you sound really benign and not at all like you're trying to take hold of a big portion of esports and make money for it yourself. Now, here's one of the reasons why I'm very suspect about all of this, because there's lots of ways to run this fucking madness, this asylum that is esports, lots of ways. And if you were passionate about being a media brand and helping players to get that kind of stuff, you would do that, like the company that worked with NIP to do that. You don't hear them making leagues or owning multiple teams. They're just like, look, yeah, we'll just represent you and we'll get you deals. Certainly, there's plenty of agencies out there that would do that. That don't feel the need to have direct financial ties to the teams. They just are an agency. And one thing that came up a long time ago, and I never showed this screenshot before because, there's no real story here on its own. But people will remember when Fallen got hacked. His Skype got hacked. I believe his Twitter got hacked as well. But certainly his Skype was compromised. And there was a bunch of stuff that came out about it, as a result of that. It was very unfortunate. And, again, don't condone hacking. No one's privacy should be invaded like that. And you should use websites, like Have I Been Pwned and all of that stuff to check if your passwords have been compromised on a database. We saw it with XSplit and everything else. You should change those passwords. Definitely don't have anything similar for any chat program that's, important like Skype. But there was one Skype I got sent the Fallen files, if you like. I got sent them. It was just like, hey, Richard, maybe there's something in here you could do something with it with. And I'm like, if it hasn't already come out and you haven't found anything, then there's nothing there. And honestly, they were very dull and very drab and mostly just about money and stuff, because that's what this person, I think the person who hacked him wanted to prove Fallen was cheating, and they thought like they would find like PayPal to Mr. Hacksaw or something, right? Like, it just wasn't there, was it? But there was one conversation that stood out to me at the time, and I thought, aye, gonna keep my eye on what this guy's up to, because I'd already heard rumblings about what he wanted to do. And it was this screenshot here. Now, we've blurred out the Skype name, but you will see the chat. And it's Nicola Nyholm, and he's talking to Fallen. And he talks about the E-League situation when they got disqualified. And he says that he would like to collaborate on something with them. And he says it must be a players' union. He says, hi, Gabriel, I think it's about time that we get the plane, I think it means players or plan for the union, obviously a typo, going, and I'm willing to help finance this. I have several ideas how the entire structure of the industry can go beyond just the union, but let's talk about it face to face. I think we should use the downtime after ESL here in July and August to get things rolling. Now, again, cool. We all identify the need for a union. I don't know if it being bankrolled by a sugar daddy that also owns teams is a good idea, though. Anyone think that's a good idea? A guy who controls money, that controls other teams, that controls a media group, that represents a team. You're going to be the guy who funds a player union, are you? Well, I can't see anything possibly wrong with that. And what this says to me is that this isn't somebody that just wants to invest in esports for the sake of esports. They want to invest in esports, but they want to have agency within esports. They want to be able to control elements of esports, whether it's through a union, whether it's through a media company, whether it's through a tournament circuit. It's all looking a little bit sinister to me. I don't like that. And I've stood up against stuff like this throughout my entire esports career because I know what it leads to. And it doesn't lead to good places. It leads to fixed games. It leads to players being frozen out of opportunity, held in a contract gulag. It leads to mingling of finances and financial mismanagement. It leads to nepotism. It leads, honestly, nothing good comes out of a select few people controlling something that should be organic and open to everybody. Even if they have the best of intentions, It eventually goes the way all of these things do. Greed, money, when do I get mine? The human element, the selfish gene kicks in, and this is what you end up with. So be very dubious. Be very dubious about where this is all headed. Keep an eye on RFRSH. I'm going to. They know I'm going to. Because I think what we've got here is just basically a diet ES force. Something that's going to look to effectively copy that model so they can get maximum returns through conflicts of interest that have no place in an open and fair and just and competitive scene that has integrity. Anyway, I think that's that. I think that's me. You haven't got anything to add, have you, Sam? Didn't miss anything out, did I?
No, you got it, bud.
Great stuff. All right, well, take care. We'll see you on the next video.